like Marla said, usually I speak to really large groups, 11, 1,200 people in a ballroom all day long. And I love doing that because it means I can control the room. But I also really love teaching smaller groups. I have the ability, rather than to deliver a lecture, to actually teach something and make it a little bit adaptable to your circumstances. And so since we've got an hour and a half together tonight, I'd like to do that so that it's applicable to you, okay? So with that said, I need to get to know you a little bit better. How many of you currently have an Ancestry.com subscription? Okay, that's most of you. How many of you currently have a copy of your family tree online at Ancestry? Okay, that's one or two fewer of you, okay? And let's see. How many of you feel like you have a pretty good grasp of kind of the basics of how Ancestry works? Most of you. Okay, so that helps because now we can be a little bit more advanced. Now I know there's some people online, and I didn't get to see you raise your hands. Marlis, I think, is a little bit monitoring the chat, but here's how I'd like to handle questions. So I'll go through a couple of things, and then I'll pause and ask if there are questions about that thing, right? So if you think of a question that doesn't pertain to what we're talking about, write it down. Time to ask those, pause, and we'll Q&A as we go. Okay, let's do this then. I will sit down so that you can see the screen. So I gave you a couple of handouts. One of them is actually our search handout because it's really difficult to talk about any record collection on Ancestry without having a basic fundamental understanding of search. So while we are not going to go through one at a time the bullet points on search handout, I wanted you to have a copy of that just so that you had some kind of foundational understanding. Because most of you raised your hand and said you have an understanding of how the site works. Again, we won't take a ton of time to go through that. So the other handout is specifically about finding immigration records in the New World and then what Old World records Ancestry has available. Okay? Okay. So let's talk about this. One of the questions, and it's actually already come up, Larry and I were sitting here chatting, right? Yeah. Which is, what records are even available on Ancestry? That's kind of a broader, or a more specific question that stems from a broader question about genealogy records in general, which is what records exist. Right? I get emails every single day from people who say, I've got this brick wall and I can't find my great-great-grandmother and I'm looking for her birth certificate. And when I go back and forth with them a few times and finally dig it out of them, the place and time where their grandmother lived didn't issue birth certificates. So a record doesn't even exist that they're looking for. So the idea is with genealogy, of course, you have to start thinking about what records exist and then do those records exist on Ancestry. And then is, once you determine if the record exists, how can you best search those records to find what you're looking for? Because what are some of the challenges with having digitized records online? We love having digitized records online, right? I mean, I've been doing family history since I was 12 years old. I remember, I grew up in California, and my dad and I would go to Utah for a week every year to the family history library, and we would sit and scroll through the microfilm, and right, like we wrote letters to archives. My dad, every time he went on a business trip somewhere, he'd ask if there was an archive near where he was going so he could go do some research for us. So, I mean, I remember doing it old school, and sometimes we still have to, but the fact that there is this breadth is kind of mind-blowing. I'll give you a little bit of an inside track to just kind of where we're at. So just this last week, Ancestry announced that we now have 20 billion historical records available online. Okay, that sounds like not a lot when you consider the population of the world in the history of the world, but put that into a little bit of perspective. I've been with the company now for 13 years, and about 8 or 9 years ago, my job in the company was I was the indexing manager. So I was over the team that was responsible for getting all of the records indexed and searched to put them online after they'd been digitized. And at the time, I was responsible for the single largest line item budget in the company. And with that amount of money, we were indexing about 2 million records a month. For the last almost 3 years now, Ancestry is now indexing an average of 2 million records a day. Right? Like, thank you for that reaction, because that was the right. Like, I say every time I say that out loud, I still have to like think, like, is that the right number? Right? Because it blew my mind that technology has increased at such a rate that we can put that many records online. Now, Larry and I were talking about Family Search. Family Search has, I think, records indexed online. But what Family Search has done that's a little different is they've gone out and they have microfilm records for 60, 70 years all over the world. Those microfilms are stored in a brand new carved out, and they create copies that they send over the world. And they have billions upon billions of other records in archives and libraries. And I have a good friend who is acquired in her archive a series of records, all told. Um, that many things. And making records circle 20 billion records. Next. Okay, different language doesn't really. Okay, so people had a reason to have their name spelled consistently. Very for me, and I have a military document where he had to sign images from that. So it's going to be for the evening, and about 10 after 8 or so, hands-on stuff. Okay, so that's the plan. So let's talk about again, dump something in smart. And so a lot of times, various spelling can be accounted. I should probably use a It can be super.
Now counting all different.
Like, control as well. So you can capture. My favorite resource on our entire website, hands down, is the card catalog. Did any of you, have any, let me see if I can ask that. Correctly. Were any of you, under the, down toward the very bottom of the menu, there is a card catalog. I've been having this discussion because they're trying to figure out why we still call it a card catalog. Because what is our catalog? It was actual cards, drawers in the library that you would go to figure out. Right? And search for records about people. Search for record sets for a. I'm going to type in great grandma's name. You're going to need 30 for the Netherlands in Dutch. But there are millions, it looks like 16 databases, 8 million marriage record database. I can tell you that right now.
What about other
so here's international subscription. Okay, so and you can do that for any country. Like Argentina, we have 5 databases. Okay, that little card is not going away. One of the challenges of sometimes slow internet is things don't refresh as quickly. There we go. Okay, so millions of records. Even just in 5 databases, millions of 12 databases, right? Not a ton of records out of the Ukraine, but a few. Okay, so that's how the card catalog works. Is you just kind of play around with different countries. New York, okay? So Ancestry has 1,096 databases for the state of New York, okay? Then that's kind of a big list. Like if you're dealing with 5 databases for, Argentina, decide if Ancestry has the record you're looking for. Well, once you fill in some of that because there is an 1892 The other benefit of searching that specific database is we've created a custom search form for every single database based on what we know was indexed in that record collection. I can't tell you how many times people go to the global search form and fill it out, because if there's a blank field, you feel like you have to fill them all out. Okay, fill it all out, and then get mad because they can't find what they're looking for. And when I question them a little bit, what I usually discover is, well, I'm looking for a marriage record. Okay, well then why did you put the death date in? Because guess what? That's not on a marriage record. Okay, so think about, sometimes you have to think about what kind of information might be on the record you're looking for. Okay, and so if you search directly from the database page, we're only going to give you the fields that include the information that's on that record. Question?
Can you go back one thing? One thing that I use, it's covered up, see which is I can clean up in the upper right.
Oh yeah, that little card that.
Where it says sort by.
Yep.
I go by record count.
Yeah, it puts the largest databases at the top of the list. Yeah, the default sort on this card catalog is by popularity. We actually did that after a lot of user testing, and what we discovered is that a lot of times people use the card catalog just to come in and grab the 1940 census or the U.S. city directories, and so they wanted those most popular databases at the top of the list. But you can sort it alphabetically. You can sort it. I come in and actually sort the card catalog by date added. I do that every couple of weeks because that puts the new stuff at the top of the list. And so I can see what Ancestry's added in the last couple of weeks since I looked. Or, like was said, you can sort by record count, and it's going to put those largest databases at the top of the list. Okay? Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so when I'm on this database-specific page, there are a couple of things on here that are going to help you in your research. Like I said, first of all, the form only contains the fields that are indexed in the records. Okay. Second is, if you scroll down past the search box, you're going to see two things. You're going to see source information. That's going to tell you where Ancestry obtained these records. So we obtain records from all kinds of places. We've been an internet company since the mid-90s. When we first started going out to libraries and archives and asking them to digitize their precious records and put them on the internet, they were very confused because they didn't know what we wanted to do and where we wanted to put it or who we even were, right? And so we would work with people who would sell records to us or who had been collecting or indexing records. Now we work with large organizations who have care of some of these records, and so you can see exactly where these records have come from. In this case, the State Library in New York. Below that is going to be a database description. Now here is one reason why the database description is so important. The database description very often, just like this, will tell you what the limitations of that particular set of records are. If you just saw New York State Census 1892 and dove in and started searching and couldn't find your family and couldn't find your family, maybe you couldn't find your family because the name is spelled so wrong you're going to have to get super creative. Or maybe you couldn't find your family because the specific county where your family lived at the time wasn't even included in the census that year. So we've given you the information so that you can check before you start searching and searching and searching to see if what you're looking for even exists in this record set. Now, what's noticeably missing from this 1892 census? Yeah, right. Okay, so most of the heavily Jewish population counties in New York weren't necessarily included in the census that year. Okay, questions about that? Yes?
Well, you know, sometimes when you go to one of these individual card catalog
databases,
okay,
yes.
what you wind up with is the ability to scan through a document.
Correct.
And some of these documents are huge.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way, I assume they've never OCR'd any of this stuff, so it's hard to find stuff, or you literally have to go through all the information.
Yeah, so I think I know what you're talking about, and so I'll explain what I think you're talking about, and if I'm wrong, then you can correct me. So Ancestry has, for years, been digitizing records wherever we can set up cameras or whoever will send us copies of their records. And there's a couple of things that we find. One is that sometimes we get into the records and we realize that we can't index them for whatever reason, right? We had a collection of Italian records that we tried to index, and it was mixed Italian and Latin. It was in really old handwriting, and the records were super deteriorated. We tried indexing them, and we just could not get the indexing quality that we wanted out of it. But we wanted those images to still be available to people if they wanted to take the time and effort to go through them. Just like you would a reel of microfilm in a library, we wanted people to be able to go through those images. Sometimes it's just that our imaging is outpacing our indexing. So indexing is a really expensive thing. We pay professional keyers, professional indexers, to index the records that go online on Ancestry, and it is not a cheap proposition. And so, but you can scan an entire reel of microfilm that is more than 1,000 images in less than 2 minutes, right? Yeah. So you can scan a 200-page book in 10 minutes, right? And so we can create images a lot faster than we can create indexes. And so sometimes we outpace. And so you'll see collections on occasion that you'll find in the card catalog. You'll come to this page and there will be no search box. There will just be this little browse box over here. Right. And that is because the index has not yet been created for that set of images. So you can still use this browse. You can come in here and you can say, okay, well, I'm interested in Delaware County. I'm interested in Middletown. I want enumeration district 2. And it will take you to the set of images for the 1892 census for Middletown, New York, 6 images to scroll through, right? And then you can play around with the image, zoom in and zoom out. It clears up a lot faster if you're on faster internet. And then work your way through those images, again, just like you would a reel of microfilm in the library. Okay? Was that your question?
Basically.
Okay.
Especially when you go up to Europe.
Yeah.
It's, a lot of that stuff has not been, it's been scanned, as you say. But
Correct.
it's not been
Indexed.
OCR indexed.
Yes. Yeah, so when it's handwritten, so here's the difference, and this will become important here in a minute. There's a difference between indexing handwritten records and indexing typewritten records. Typewritten records, we can index super fast because a computer does it. Now, the computer doesn't always get it right, right? Okay. How many of you have ever used the ANCESTRY city directory collection? Yeah. City directories, let's talk about city directories for just a minute. City directories are one of, well, let's try spelling it right first. Directories, and then clear the census filter. And the top thing should be, if I was sorted by popularity, the US city directories. This one collection of records, let's see if we can show you the number so it can blow your mind. 1.5 billion records in that one database. Okay? And here's why. So these city directories start in 1822. They go through 1955. We have collected, or 1995. We have collected them from a vast majority of sources. One of the things that we can do is, depending on where we got the book and how old it is, we have these sheet feed scanners. So we just cut the binding off the book and feed the pages through a sheet feed scanner. We can scan an entire directory in about 1.5 minutes, right? And then, because they're typewritten columns that are typically formatted, last name, comma, first name, address, occupation, whatever, right? We can tell a computer, here's how this book is formatted, and a computer will read every page to create the index. So we're able to index these really fast. What that means is that sometimes you'll end up with an ad or a business name that gets indexed as a name and it looks a little funny, right? Or sometimes you'll end up with somebody whose entry looks a little bit different. Like maybe instead of just being a last name, comma, first name, it had a little extra in parentheses, Wid of John, right? And the computer didn't know what to do with that, so it just threw it in as a bunch of keywords, right? Sometimes those pages were not printed on very high quality paper, and there's a little bit of bleed through from the other side of the image. So when the computer goes to read it, it doesn't catch everything because the bleed through confuses it. Sometimes those city directories came to Ancestry not as a bound book that we had to scan, but as a roll of microfilm that the library had digitized a series of their old city directories years ago, and maybe those city directories don't even exist in physical format anymore. So we've scanned the microfilm. Problem with that is now, microfilm has what's called artifacts on the image. You ever take a picture and you have like little random spots sometimes on the image? Well, again, if a computer is reading that to index it, it doesn't know that those little splotches are characters, and so it sometimes tries to read them, and it, again, gets a little confused. So the fact that we have 1.5 billion records in this single database is amazing, but my guess is, don't quote me on this or share this anywhere where anybody that I work with can find it, but my guess is there's probably at least another 5 to 10 million records that the computer just couldn't even read. Okay? So search for sure, but then also browse. So if you know, for example, where your family lived at a particular time and place, then go to that particular state. So we can go here to New York, and we can go to Brooklyn, and we can go to the year of 1897, because you know your family got here in 1894, and the 1900 census, you haven't been able to find them yet. And so here is the city directory for Brooklyn, New York in 1897. It has 905 images. You don't have to go through all 905 images. We give you 2 different ways to get through images quickly. One is what's called this film strip at the bottom. So you can just zip your way through this film strip to kind of get an idea of how the records are organized, to maybe pop in on an image or two. What it looks like is these are arranged alphabetical by last name. Well, that makes it easy, especially if your family name is something that starts with an S. So I'm just going to jump to image number 700, and I'm in the S's. Okay? And then I can, you know, just adjust that up or down as I need to get to where I need to be until I finally can just go page by page to find my particular part of the alphabet. And there you go. Alcohol? Oh, yeah, hey, there you go. Apparently James A. Webb and Son were running an alcohol business. Okay? Yes.
Okay, so as you pointed out, some of the indexing is not perfect. But we can go in there and give changes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Aside from when I do that, what happens to it after?
Okay, that's a great question. Okay, so anytime you're viewing an image, chances are Ancestry created that index. Okay, now there's a lot of records on our site where there is only an index. There are no images. For example, the New York Marriage Index, right? Or the UK birth, marriage, and death records if your family spent time going through England. And that is usually because whoever owns those records has not given us access to the images. They will only give us an index. Social Security Administration, they will only give us the death index. They're not going to give us those original applications, no matter how often or much we beg, which we do regularly. Okay, so if there's only an index, we typically did not create that index, which means you can't, if it's wrong, we can't help you. But if there's an image, chances are Ancestry created the index, and at the very bottom, and I can't make this any bigger, so hopefully you can kind of see where my mouse is waving down here. At the very bottom down here, you have your little film strip icon that pops the film strip up and down. You have your little page of whatever that you're on that you can type in and hit enter to go to a different page. And then you also have this little show index button. And what it does is it pops up a little panel that shows you exactly what was indexed on this page. And so if your name was misindexed, let's find one. I'm sure there's one on this page. Here, what is this? I doubt that is his first name. Cole Kirksif. That's not even a name. Okay. Slems. Where are the Slems? Oh, it seems. So, okay, so here's what happened. I wish I could make this bigger. Let me make this bigger for you so that you can see what happened here. Okay, so the name is Seams, S-I-E-M-S, okay? But because of the bad image quality, the computer read that as an L. So they've all been indexed. This whole family is Slems, okay? So that's one of the things you have to take into consideration when you're searching is what characters could look like other characters if they weren't cleanly written. Well, an I and an L, easily confused, okay? Then, again, remember these records were OCR'd or read by a computer, so the computer got confused by the little apostrophe R abbreviating the name of Christopher, likely, right? And so it indexed it as something entirely different. So I can come down here, and I can click on this, and I can actually put in that this name is actually this, Christopher Seams, and then I can say, well, the reason it's wrong is because of a transcription error, meaning the indexing was incorrectly created. Sometimes it's actually wrong on the image, right? Sometimes on the passenger list or the census record, the name is just wrong, and you can do a correction for that as well, okay? But I'll put in that it's a transcription error, and I'll click Save. Now, here's what happens to those, okay? Ancestry gets about 10 to 12,000 of those a week, and we don't want to take the time and the money and the investment to go through and check every one of those, right? If you're in the record, if this is your family and you care enough to make a change, we're going to assume that you made that change intelligently. But we can't guarantee that, so we actually keep both indexes. So this name now, do you see how it has this, it's updated now here, and it has this little parentheses around it? Okay, it's going to look like that to me because I'm the one who made the change. But to everybody else, if any one of you was to go in and search for this guy, not right now, it takes a couple weeks to roll it in. But what you will see is you'll see the original index name, and then you'll see the correction in parentheses underneath it. It will come up as one hit in the index, but when you click to view the record page will show you the name with the alternate in parentheses under. I'm sure some of you have seen that, right? The parentheses, yes. That's where those come from. And here's the even cooler thing. If you click on the name in parentheses in the index, it will tell you who made the correction. And so if somebody's making correction to Grandpa's name, maybe it's because they're related and are researching the same family, or maybe it's just because their family was a neighbor and they just noticed it was wrong and
also get,
fixed it.
Notified that somebody made a correction to a record.
Yes, if you have attached that record to somebody in your tree and somebody comes and makes some kind of a correction or a notation on it, you receive a notification of that. It's a great community tool as well. Yes?
I've encountered a few where the correction was not correct and I knew it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so again, we don't have anybody policing this. So if the original is wrong and the correction is wrong, just add another one. I think the most I've ever seen is 5. And yeah, the thing is that it doesn't change. It never changes. We don't override or change anything permanently. We keep all of those as alternates, and then all of them become searchable, right? Okay. Was that 100% answering your question?
100%.
Awesome. Okay. Any other questions about this concept of indexing OCR versus handwriting? Awesome. Okay. Let's keep going. So let's talk about, so the card catalog. Any other questions about the card catalog? You get how that works? Yes.
Just to clarify back to 1892 New York, I probably saw New York in the list.
New York City is not in the 1892 census. Parts of the Bronx are, and I think that's the only, not Brooklyn. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know if they didn't. I haven't actually looked into it enough. I don't know if they just didn't take a census in all counties, or if different counties didn't turn it over to the state.
So when were the first, 1896, or what would be the first New York one?
So there's the 1900 federal census, and then there's a 1905. So the New York State census are on the 5s every 10 years. So 5, 15, 25. Yeah. And those are super useful, because one of the things that happens is, especially as these immigrants are coming and moving into these big cities, is that they're moving constantly. So I always, when I'm researching a recent immigrant family into New York in particular, use the censuses in conjunction with the city directories. Because the other thing is, you've got moving day, right? Do you guys know about moving day? 1st of May. 1st of May every year was moving day. And the reason it was moving day was because landlords would give a break on rent. And if you moved into their apartments on the 1st of May, they would give you a month of free rent. So there are families who literally moved every single year because then they got a year's worth of rent for 11 months. I mean, a year's worth of living for 11 months of rent, right? And so that's one of the reasons why we see these families move year after year after year. And sometimes they're just moving to the next building, right?
You can also find the migration of the family from city to city to city.
Absolutely.
To state.
Yep. Yeah, those city directories are a gold mine. But like I said, if searching isn't working, try going to the specific directory and paging through it.
In the 1940 census, my family all came here in the late 30s. That's our new census.
Yep.
Public. I have corrected the index on my grandfather, that family, like several times, because it's the fault of the census table.
Right.
And it's never been, I just checked again.
How long ago did you do it?
The first time?
Yeah.
Years.
Oh. Yeah, we update that about every 4 to 6 weeks, I think, last time I checked. So let me just double check this here first. So here, okay, so my last name is Cowan, C-O-W-A-N. This is how my grandfather was indexed in the 1940 census. Corman, okay? I searched and searched and searched and couldn't find him. Luckily, I knew where they lived at the time, and so I did a search by the specific address and enumeration district and was able to find them. Now, when you're doing a search and you're looking at your search results, the way you know if there is a correction that has been applied or an alternate is this little pencil shows up, okay? And then when you actually click through to view the record, you're going to see that little, oh, it's been attached to my tree, so it's going to get all that extra stuff. Okay, you're going to see the little name in parentheses, and then if you click on that, it tells you who made that correction. In this case, it was me, so it shows up. If your corrections are not showing up, make sure that you're doing it from the image.
Like here, the images, I have it saved to. I can't do, is that a place to check?
You have to actually open up the image and check in the index pop-up panel. Yeah. Because the other thing you can do, and I see people do this all the time, is you can make a notation on a record. Oh, we may have removed that ability. You used to be able to make a notation on a record. Oh, here it is. There we go. Add alternate info. Yeah. Oh, I've already added it. Add your own. There we go. So you can do it from here, and sometimes I don't think it always catches it. So my recommendation is always do it from the image. Okay, other card catalog-y, indexy questions before we move on?
1892 to 1905, nothing in
The 1900 census, the U.S. federal census, but no New York. No, city directories. And we have, the New York Public Library has been super generous about providing us with city directories for New York because of some of those very limitations. Okay, anything else? Okay, so the card catalog, like I said, it's my favorite resource on our site. I use it more than just about anything else. And the reason I do is to just go see if the record I'm looking for even exists. It saves me a ton of time from having to search and search and search and get frustrated. If the record I'm looking for exists, then I'm going to be more persistent, you know, in that particular database looking for it. But if the record doesn't exist, then I'm not wasting my time. Let's talk about some Jewish-specific resources. So Ancestry, probably about 10 years ago now, we partnered with JewishGen. So JewishGen for years was run out of Texas on some private servers down there, and it outgrew what the funding and the donations were able to keep up with. And so Ancestry agreed. There was an agreement that was reached that was not totally altruistic. There was an agreement that was reached that we would host JewishGen's, like everything that JewishGen has, we would host them on Ancestry servers if we could copy that information into Ancestry databases. So almost all of the databases available through JewishGen, there are copies of them on Ancestry and searchable. Now the question, of course, then becomes, why, right? If it's available on JewishGen, why also have it on Ancestry? Well, one reason is if it's in an Ancestry database, you can attach it to your tree as a source citation. The other thing is, and you may have learned this in your own internet research, I can do a search in Google and a search in Bing and a search in Yahoo, and for the exact same search terms, and get 3 different sets of search results. Because different search engines are programmed by different people using different algorithms to surface information differently. And as much as I try to make sense of that, I don't understand the workings of it. I just know that it is. Okay. So one of the things I have found in doing my own Jewish research, and by my own I don't mean my family, I wish I did, right? But the research that I do for clients is that I will oftentimes search both. If I can't find it in JewishGen, I'll search in Ancestry and vice versa, because different algorithms will sometimes surface information differently. Okay. There are a couple of minor exceptions to the JewishGen collections on Ancestry. In particular, the Yizkor books. The Yizkor books, there was an agreement in place that did not allow JewishGen to include that in what was copied over to Ancestry. I know that there are some organizations that are part of JewishGen, like JRI Poland, where they are continually indexing information, and Ancestry is so that those indexes get updated on the JewishGen side of the house, but in Ancestry they only get updated about once every 9 to 12 months. Okay, so if they've added information, it might not show up. It likely will not show up right away in Ancestry. But for those closed databases, they're going to be there in their entirety. Okay, I'll show you how to find those, but are there any questions just about that relationship with those?
Yeah, I answered one question, which was about the currency, so I understand. And actually, if I remember, like Litvak Sig, for example, and JR probably the same way, they have paid members who are paying them to subscribe. They don't even give them to JewishGen. Like
for a while,
yeah. And then it's still another time frame
before Ancestry gets it. Yeah.
I thought I remember hearing that there was like a 5-year, there was some sort of term limit on those databases being available from JewishGen on Ancestry. Are you aware of that?
So so for the foreseeable future, they will be there. Yes. When the deal was first announced 10 years ago or whatever, that was the original plan, but I think that has been renegotiated as time has gone on. I don't know all the details of it, but for the foreseeable future, they're still available. Other questions?
Interesting question. So let's say a database is taken out of ANCESTRY.
Uh-huh.
If I attach the records to my person, will they still be there?
It's a great question. So the source citation, let me repeat that for the people on the computer in case they didn't hear it. So if you attach a record to somebody in your tree that you find on Ancestry, and later that database is removed from Ancestry, which does happen on occasion, not often at all, but on occasion, what will happen is the source citation will still be there. So when you attach a record in Ancestry, it automatically creates a source citation in your tree for that record. But if you actually click through to view the record will no longer be available. And usually that's the problem is, well, if it's an index only, obviously the organization removes the index, they've removed the index. If it's a set of images, if you are syncing your online tree with some kind of software, like currently Family Tree Maker syncs with your Ancestry tree, within the next month or two, Roots Magic will also sync with your Ancestry tree. If you're using a synced software, it actually downloads copies of the images to your hard drive. So even though the record isn't on Ancestry anymore, you'll still have a copy of it on your hard drive. Yes?
You just brought up something that I'm not familiar with.
Okay.
You said there's Roots.
Yeah, so Ancestry provides you an online tree service, and that's free. Like anybody can create a tree on Ancestry, and it's designed to be this really easily accessible cloud-based solution to build and store your family tree. But many of us like to have backups, first of all, and so I keep a set of I keep a copy of my tree on my computer so that I have a backup. The other reason I keep a copy of my tree on my computer is because I'm not always connected to the internet. I spent 4.5 hours on an airplane today and didn't want to pay for the ridiculously expensive airplane internet that doesn't work anyway, and yet I can still have access to my tree because it's on my computer. And so there are two software programs, one that currently syncs and one that is their next version will sync, and that's Family Tree Maker and Roots Magic. And if you have those software programs, it'll sync with your online tree at Ancestry, so you don't have to do double data entry. So it just keeps two copies. And you can work in your software and it will sync online, or you can work online and it will sync to your software. Either way. Okay, it's a great question. Any other questions about JewishGen and that relationship? Okay, so let me show you a couple of ways to find the record collections in the card catalog if you are looking specifically through the card catalog, and then I'll show you one place where you can kind of go universally. So other than just being able to type the name of a country or a state, you can also come in here and type in the word Jewish, and it will pull up most of the databases. You can see there the JRI Poland stuff comes up right at the top, the Joe Bar records. Ancestry also has, besides just having the JewishGen databases, we have relationships with the Joint Distribution Committee, the JDC. We have a relationship with the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. We're in the process of indexing all 70 million of the records in their holdings. We have relationships with the Thank you. I was trying to get the acronym out and it wasn't coming. The American Jewish Historical Society. So we have relationships with several U.S.-based Jewish organizations who have been collecting international records for quite some time. Now, here is the difference between those collections. Any record that originally came from JewishGen is free on Ancestry. So you do not have to have a subscription, or if you only have a US subscription but you want to look at the JRI Poland records, you do not have to have an international subscription to view those records. If those records came from JewishGen, that specific database on Ancestry is a free database. The same with the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. Those records are actually being indexed by volunteers. They are not being indexed by our paid keyers. And so any records that are indexed by that group of contributors are available for free. Now, here is the slight thing with the Holocaust records. And the easiest way to find them is just to type in the acronym, United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. And it will bring up the 29 databases of records that have been indexed so far. This is an ongoing indexing program with them. So if you just type in USHMM, it'll bring up all of the records from the Holocaust Memorial Museum. You can see they're from all over, different countries throughout Europe, some places outside of Europe, and they're going to be typically in the language of the country. So one of the questions we get asked is, well, if I search, is the Ancestry going to translate the record? We don't. Okay. Well, we create the index, but we're not going to translate the record for you. What we do translate is field labels. So if it's a form of some sort and we know that this field is the name and this field is the birth date, we'll translate the field labels. But when you actually go in to view the image, it won't be translated.
Do you know offhand, in the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum databases, now they had an arrangement with the International Tracing Service. Are the ITS records separate outside of this bill?
Yes.
Is it a different arrangement?
Yeah, so this is actually, I love talking about these records because this is probably one of the proudest moments of my entire career. If you've heard me talk about this, like even now, 7 years later, I can't do it without getting choked up. For the first 2.5 years I was with Ancestry, my job was European content acquisition. So I got to work with contractors and travel to Europe and work with archives and libraries to see if we could negotiate access to their records. And there are some organizations who just won't give you access for anything, or where it's a government organization, and so the negotiation process takes years before they finally sign a contract to allow us to digitize their records. And I loved doing that. My next job in the company, as I mentioned, was I was the indexing manager, and then I moved from that into creating what is called the Ancestry World Archives Project, which is our volunteer keying program. So I was part of the team that helped get the World Archives Project up and running. And while I was doing that, my original boss came back to me, who was over content acquisition, and he said, Krista, I have been working with the Holocaust Memorial Museum for 5 years, and every single time I have approached them with an agreement, they have these 70 million records in their possession, including the ITS records, that they have been collecting and getting access to for decades. And they have actually their research requests were outpacing their ability to meet them at a really high level, because they didn't even have internal indexes to find things. So one of you would go and put in a research request, can you see if you can find my great aunt, this is what I know about her, and it would sit there for 6, 8, 9 months until a researcher could physically get it and go into their collections and see if they could find the information. And so when they heard that we had created this World Archives Project, that was intriguing to them, because they thought, well, maybe we can create a finding aid for our internal researchers so that they can access these records and fill your research requests faster. And he said, I think this is our way in. And so the two of us flew out to DC and sat down with a group of the board of directors of the museum and the research team, and I mean, there's a whole bunch of people in that room. And by the time we walked out of that room, in theory, we still had to negotiate the details of the contract, but in theory, they had agreed to let us index those records. And it's just so humbling to have been a part of that experience, to recognize in that room that these records are languishing in this archive, and the people who want that information are dying off very quickly, and we need to make this information more accessible faster. And so we put it out to the community, and unfortunately they're not indexing it quite as fast as we would like, because it's all done by volunteers. So 70 million records, and I think we've only gotten through about 10 or 11 million of them.
This is World Memory Project,
Yeah.
as it's called now,
Yeah.
and it's really set up for students.
Uh-huh.
So Larry, when you teach your student groups locally or the high school,
Yep.
it's perfect for them. It's
Yeah.
a very easy and rewarding project.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Mine are 4th and 5th grade.
You know what? We have groups of elementary school students who index for us.
Really?
Yeah, they'll do it as a unit of a school project. And here's the difference with this particular set of records, and it's something you need to be aware of. One of the things that we had to negotiate as part of the access to these records is, when these records are being indexed, of course you have to see the image, because you have to be able to index the information off of it. So if you're participating in the indexing, you get to see the images. But when they go live as a completed database on our site, there are no images. And the reason is because some of these images contain horrific images, lots of notations that the museum felt were way too sensitive to just be readily accessible on the internet. So if you find a record in one of the Holocaust Memorial databases that you're interested in, we have created, there's a little extra link on the side. see if I can find a good example for you here. Okay, so it's just an index. There is no image, right? Okay, but there is a link here in this database description that allows you to take this index information and it will send a request to the Holocaust Memorial Museum. And because we've digitized those records already, they can send you an emailed electronic image of that. And they do that for free. Okay, so the database is free to search on Ancestry. The images are free, but they're only available on an as requested. They're not available on our site because of some of the sensitivities around those records. Any questions about that? Okay, so these are just great records. If you're interested in helping to index, if you just go to, let's see if I can remember how to get there, help and community. And then over here, you're going to see this link for the World Archives Project. And the specific, the Holocaust records specifically are called the World Memory Project records within that larger. Yeah, worldmemoryproject.org, actually. We've got our own landing page for it. And you can see, like, so right now, these are the records that are being indexed, is the records out of Romania. And so they usually try to complete a record set before they release the next record set. The museum hasn't given us all 70 million of their records. They want us to index them as we go.
Videos and training information.
Yeah. Yeah, as a matter of fact, here, I'll just show you in case you missed that. It's worldmemoryproject.org, and it takes you right to this page, which is a page co-branded with us in the museum. It has information about how to get started, about, yeah, there's links. Yep, links for all sorts of stuff there on that page. So, okay, so that is the Holocaust Museum records and the Jewish Gen records. Again, those are free, regardless of what level of subscription you have. The JDC records and the AJHS records are not free. Okay, so those are still going to be behind that paywall, and it's going to be entirely dependent on what level of subscription you have, whether or not you have access to those records. So if you have a U.S. subscription and they're U.S.-based records, or if you have a world subscription because they're records from somewhere outside of the United States. Okay? Okay, last thing I will show you, and then we'll take a little break. So if you go to ancestry.com/Jewish, we've created a whole landing page just for you people. We don't do this for just everybody. Okay. So here is a series of resources that we have made available to you. First off, there is a search box on this page. This is a replica of the global search box on Ancestry with one change. And that change is that instead of applying the US-based soundex to surnames, it applies the Dach-Mokotów soundex to surnames. So most of you who have, in particular, Eastern European surnames that have been morphed or misspelled or mispronounced or mistranslated through time, the Dach-Mokotów soundex accounts for that a lot better than the US-based soundex algorithm. And so it just applies that to those surnames as you search. What determines what you're searching is these little tabs that don't really look like tabs up here, okay? So you're either going to search all Jewish collections, you're going to search all North American records, all European records, all records from all other countries, or just Holocaust-specific records, okay? And you click on that, and it will take you again to a search form, but it's going to search just that subset of records. So instead of searching all 20 billion records on Ancestry, or instead of searching one specific database on Ancestry, you're searching a subset of databases that relate to Jewish, where it's identifiable that these are Jewish records, right? So if it's a Jewish specific record collection that we can say this is a record of people who are Jews, then we can quantify that. If it's just somebody in a passenger list where it lists their language as Yiddish, we can quantify that. But if it's a U.S. federal census, just because they were born in, Poland, doesn't mean we can quantify that. Does that make sense? So we can give you this subset of search results based on whether or not we can tell that this record is for a Jewish person. Yes. So any single database where we know that this record is just for Jewish records, it's been included as search results for this. Okay. The other thing, so I mentioned the Dave Mokotov Soundex. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Gary Mokotov. He has a website, Abotenu. He wrote tutorials for each one of these pages for us. So anytime you click on one of these little tabs here, there will be a little Learn More button, and that is an article written by Gary about what you're going to be searching with that collection of records. So we've provided you with some tutorial information there. Okay, two other things I want to show you, actually three other things I want to show you on this page. We have taken the shtetl seeker from the shtetl finder from JewishGen, and we have also got a copy of it here. It's called the Jewish Community Locator on our site. I don't know why we changed the name, but that is essentially what that is. And then this is the Jewish name variation database. So for example, you know, your grandmother goes by the name Rebecca when she's here in the United States. United States. Why it's at the top of the list, I don't know. Okay. And you suspect that she was from Lithuania. You then are taken to, here are all of the different possible Lithuanian and Yiddish variants of the name Rebecca so that you know how to search for her. Okay. Yeah, Catherine. Yeah, right. So this is the only, actually, the Jewish ethnic group is the only ethnic group where we have actually surfaced that information. So we have people asking for this all the time for African names, for, you know, German names, for whatever, and we don't have this resource available for just anybody. So I love this. I use it a ton. Sometimes just because it's fascinating to me to learn some of the meanings of some of those names, but it gives you some ideas for some of your search variants, because I know that many of you like to just control those searches instead of letting the computer do it for you.
Those are in the search algorithm.
They are in the search algorithm, yeah, absolutely. Ancestry.com/Jewish, that's it. Okay, last thing on this page, and then we will take a break. I mentioned that you can go into the card catalog and search for Jewish. You can also come here at the bottom of this landing page, and you'll see that here are the free collections, and here are the premium collections. And you do have to click the little See All button at the bottom of the list. So this is a list of all of the free JewishGen or otherwise databases that we have, and then these are the ones that we charge from. It depends if they're, it looks like actually almost all of them are US records, so they'll be included as part of your US subscription. So because you have to pay.
You have to go on.
You have to be a subscriber. No, no special subscription. It just, yeah, well. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a break. It is 8:25. Let's take a 10-minute break.
Before we take a break, can I ask a question? So we're going to come back and we're going to have, what, about 25 minutes
Yeah.
thereabouts? Are people interested in their individual research and having some mentoring going on around? Or would you rather maybe ask questions or have Krista tell us more?
More.
I can keep going. Okay, so let's just take a 10-minute break and then I will keep going. Okay, we'll be ready for you.
I want to ask you, now, most of what you talked about so far is about searching.
Uh-huh.
I think some of the questions I have, I don't know if this is in your domain or not, but they're more about how to build your tree.
I can absolutely answer those. Yep, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to mute those of you who are online so that you don't get all the crazy background noise. So I'm going to hit mute, and then we'll be back in 10 minutes. Technical question.
And I just do this, going through this factor. Let's say you go to factory and you go over there and you get a couple of hits.
Mm-hmm.
One of them's great. You attach it to a person. It then takes you to the profile. I want to be able to go back to where I came from without redoing everything. Is there an easy way of doing that?
So there's two easy ways to do that. Depending on how you initiated your search, in the top right or top left-hand corner, there might be a little link that says return to all results. Let me look at what you're looking at.
That's good.
See if we can figure that out.
I just found a
Oh,
document.
yeah, got it.
And, I mean, I could do this.
Yeah, no, you know, so here's, I'll tell you, here's my little secret. Because I get asked this a lot. Like when you're in a tree and you're working on something, so let's say here, Moses Noah, and I'm doing some research on him, and I find I do a search, and I find a record, okay? And a lot of times what happens is, we tend to think very linearly because that's human nature, right? And so we think, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to click on this, and then I'm going to click on this, and then when we want to go back here, unless there's a jump, we go back. Well, the problem with going back using your web browser is that you lose stuff and it can create some problems. So here is my handy little trick that I used to teach all the time, but then people got tech smart. Like when I first started teaching this, most genealogy groups that I went to, there weren't a lot of tech smart people, and now you guys all have your own laptops with you, right? But this little trick sometimes still eludes people. So anytime I want to view a record in my search results, and it doesn't matter how I got to my search results, but I will right-click on that link and open it in a new tab. And so then I can see, is this my person? Is this not my person? If it is, I can save it, walk through the save process, and then I just close that tab, and I'm right back to my complete list of search results.
And is that what you're
I love that I just changed his life. He's like, oh.
No, you know, when
Yeah,
you first get
yeah.
started on this, you can really apply.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
When do you say open?
Anytime, yeah, I'm going to change their lives now too. Anytime, and this works anywhere on the internet with anything that is a clickable link. You can right-click on it and open that link in a new tab or a new window. I like tabs because here's why I like tabs. Because then, right, one of the things that Ancestry does is anytime you're looking at a record, we will show you what are called suggested records over there. Here's how suggested records are generated. Ancestry has this record. It's a 1900 census for a man named Moses Noah living in Brooklyn. Somebody somewhere in the Ancestry universe of 80 million family trees, 80 million family trees, people, has attached this record to somebody in their tree.
That also gets you in trouble, too.
Okay? These suggested records are the other records that the people have attached to that same person in their trees. No, the same person. So in your tree, you have a person, right? And the idea of family history, of course, is to reconstruct the identity of this person using facts and sources, and right, to tell the story of their life. So this 1900 census record has been attached to a person in a tree or a person in many trees, and these suggested records are simply the other records that are attached to that same person.
So that's a good way to find out names.
It's a great way to find married names or maiden names of women. Yeah, because, and I love suggested records because it usually means somebody's done the work already for me. But keep in mind they are just suggestions, right? I have one great-grandfather where there are 3 1920 censuses in that list because one woman in one tree couldn't figure out which one he was and attached all 3 of them, right?
But now, those suggested records are records that have not been attached?
They have been attached to some tree somewhere in the Ancestry ecosystem. They could have been attached to yours.
They could?
They could. Yeah. They're just, this is a record level view, not a tree level view. Yeah. And so the other reason I love suggested records, though, I also love when there aren't any. When there aren't any suggested records, it means I'm the first person to ever work with this record. And I'm kind of breaking new ground. And that's telling as well.
But if you attach that, won't those show up as hints?
Once a record is attached, it's not a hint. A hint is for a record that you don't yet have attached. Not if you've already attached them, they will not show up as a hint. Hints are for records you have not yet attached.
But are hints different than suggested records?
Yes, hints are based on what's in your tree. Suggested records are based on other people's trees and what's happening with that record. Okay, so they're 2 separate systems.
Now, another way to continue to search is after you attach the record and reach back to the profile page, the bottom right-hand corner. If you're quick, you can click on the little thing that says
Continue searching. Yeah.
There's no way to make that stay there long.
We actually have people who yell at us because it stays there too long. So it's a very delicate balance.
All right, so this is, not about searching, but this is when you go to, you found something, you want to add it to your tree.
Yep.
And I presume everybody here knows how to add records to their
Click
tree.
save.
And what's amazing is it, takes care of building the facts, it takes care of putting in the sources.
Yep.
And if it's somebody who's already married or whatever, I mean, it'll also insert it for other family members as well, right? So then occasionally you find a pesky thing that's not on Ancestry and you get it from Family Search.
Yep.
What is the most efficient way of, say it's a marriage record, or how do I add that, or a census record that's only on Family Search, if that makes any sense?
There aren't any, but yes.
For whatever reason. Anyways, maybe it's a bad example, but an example of where you also may want to add it to more than one person, and you want to add, of course, is a fact, is an image, and it's a source, right?
Yes. Okay, so let's talk tree structure here for just a second. So this is a person in my tree, and I noticed you have your screen on Life Story, which is awesome, except that Life Story is not for research. Life Story is designed for you to share your family tree with other people, like non-genealogy people. I use Life Story to entice my brother to actually look at our family tree once in a while. Facts is your research space. Okay, and the reason is because here's where you have all of the life events for that person that you've discovered. Here's where you have your sources, and then here's where you have this complete view, kind of like a family group sheet kind of a view. You've got parents, you can pop down siblings, you've got spouse and children. Okay, so this is your workspace. So in the center of this workspace is where your sources go. So anytime you find a record on Ancestry, you can save it to your tree. And what it does is it creates a source citation for you. That source citation also creates facts in your tree. And then we draw these pretty purple lines to tell you what. That was my idea. So if you don't like it, I'm sorry.
What if you like it?
If you like it, then I want to hear all about it. Awesome. No, one of the things, so I don't know if you remember, Ancestry changed the design of our site about 1.5 years ago. And it used to be that sources were on the bottom right-hand side below the children, and some people never looked or knew such a thing existed. And so one of the things we were trying to solve for was all of the people who complain about all of the unsourced trees on Ancestry. Well, what if we put sources front and center in everybody's face, and subtly or not so subtly tell people sources are important? So we put the sources in the middle. Well, then what we started discovering is that as we did a lot of user testing, is that a lot of people don't understand or haven't made the mental connection between facts that you enter into your tree about a person's life and the documentation that supports those facts. And so we now can click on any fact or any source in your tree, and it will tell you which facts it supports. Or you can click on any fact in your tree, and it will show you which sources support that fact.
I have relatives from
St. Botolph, it was a huge Jewish community in England, so a lot of families left other parts of Europe and settled there, and some stayed there just for 10 or 20 years. Some stayed there for 4 or 5 generations before eventually migrating over. This actually, I'll tell you this little secret too. This is the family tree of Adam Levine. He's the singer for Maroon 5 and one of the coaches on The Voice. He's the ugly guy, yeah. His grandfather is actually still living. And his grandfather used to host TV game shows back in like the 1960s and 70s, and he's quite the character. So yeah, so this is his tree that I've been building, and yeah, almost all Robert's entire paternal line came through England. His entire paternal line or maternal line came through Germany. So that's what I've been working on, the research I've been working on lately. So you have this section of sources here. And anytime you attach a record on Ancestry, it creates an automatic source. But you can also manually add sources. So you just click this little Add Source button. It does ask you 4 million questions. Okay? It's essentially, we've created a template to walk you through the process of creating a source. Right? And creating sources is tedious. I used to do it by hand with no template, and I have spent probably thousands of hours of my life going back and redoing and reformatting sources so that they're correct, because when I was 12 and started doing this, I didn't know what I was doing. And when I was 20 and thought I knew what I was doing, I didn't know what I was doing. And by the time I was 30 and got serious about this as a career, again, I went back and redid my sources again. And so I love this because it is templated. So it's actually based on Elizabeth Shown Mill's Evidence Explained. So these are all templates that she has put forth, and she's the queen of genealogy sourcing. And we've created this based on that. Now here's the thing, you don't have to fill in every field, right? If you don't know a piece of information, or if a piece of information doesn't exist, don't worry about it. But you walk through creating the source citation, you select which facts that this piece of evidence supports, and then it creates a source for you. Now I wish I knew off the top of my head a great example. I don't. To your point, what you do then is your source will then show up, your created source will show up here in the center, and you can then go in and add media. So if you've got a copy of your parents' marriage certificate, Ancestry actually has a free app for mobile devices, iPhones, tablets. It's called Ancestry Shoebox, and you can take a picture of any document and you can upload it directly to your tree as a JPEG. Yep. And so so the image then will be in your gallery, so then you can just come in here to the source citation you've created and attach the image to the source, and the source supports the facts, and then everything is nice and cleanly connected. Did you follow all that?
I got all that.
Okay.
Are you going to go to the second part?
Remind me what the second part was.
Okay, say it's marriage certificate.
Yes.
Say it had, so it's got 2 people on it. It's got this guy, his
yeah.
wife, even possibly the parents.
Right.
Which would be 4 more people. Do I have to go through that process 9 times?
Yeah, okay. So here is a limitation of Ancestry that you have run into, which is that you have to, that when you add a source, you have to add it to each person individually. So I'll tell you what I do. In the case of a couple where both sets of parents are listed, you've got 6 individuals, right? So I will create the source once for the bride, once for the groom. And then the image in my gallery, I can then attach to however many other people I want. So I don't actually create a source for all 4 of the parents.
You just know it's always with them.
I just attach the image to them, and then anytime I view that image, it lists all the individuals that are connected to it. So that's kind of my hacked workaround when I'm only working in trees. Family Tree Maker, however,
Getting the image hold again?
when you add the image to the source, it goes into your gallery. And on the gallery, you have the option to add this image, or attach another person to this image.
Through the gallery.
Through the gallery, yeah.
Okay,
That all said, I also use Family Tree Maker, and Family Tree Maker allows you to create a source once and then attach it to multiple people, and then it syncs with your online tree, and it's a lot faster and cleaner.
okay.
So sometimes software is a little bit more robust and manipulatable.
Or maybe when you're searching for things that are not on Ancestry, work through the Family Tree Maker.
Right, yeah.
Same thing.
Yep, in the back.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I'm glad to know the shoebox, because there are a lot of records from New York that you have to pay.
Yeah,
You
yep, yeah.
get them any other way.
Yep.
And so being able to digitize them easily and put them there is really.
It is. It absolutely is. Yeah, there are times where I've even been into an archive where they won't let me bring in my laptop, they won't let me bring in a pen, but my phone is usually tucked in my bra and nobody notices. And so I'll just click, 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 and tuck it back in, and then I'll go out in my car. Is that horrible? Should I have said that out loud? Anyway, I know. I didn't say what archive. Anyway, so yeah, so I love that because then, and the app in particular is pretty great because it does connect with my tree. And so as I'm uploading the photos, it asks me it's specifically who in my tree this pertains to. So I'm not just uploading a whole group of photos and then having to go back and do additional work afterwards. It's called the Ancestry Shoebox, and it's available for both iOS and Android. So if you've got an iPhone or an Android phone or a tablet that runs on either iOS or Android.
How many Ancestry apps are there? So
There are-
Ancestry on
There are, I think, 7 at last count. So there's the Ancestry app, which is essentially an access to your tree from your remote device. Then there's the Ancestry Shoebox, which is the photo taking app. There is an Ancestry DNA app, which allows you to like scan DNA kits so that you don't have to manually enter the activation code, and then it gives you alerts on your phone as it moves through the process. Shoebox from Ancestry, right. And then we have a new app that's called We're Related that actually connects. So part of this research, like for Adam Levine's tree, we internal researchers have done a bunch of research into celebrities and famous people from history, and this app will tell you, based on what's in your tree and what we've done in our trees, if you're related to famous people. It will also, you can connect it to your Facebook, and it will tell you how many of your Facebook friends you're related to. So that's amusing. Let's see, that's 4. It's called We're Related. Yeah, I know there's more. Those are the ones I use, so that's the ones.
Are branded Ancestry.
There, yeah.
So if you type Ancestry,
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
How do you handle multiple spellings of a name?
That's a great question. So, well, this is a terrible example. Let me see if I can find a quick example in this tree. Probably not. No.
My wife's mother literally has 4 different.
Yeah, well, and sometimes they're entirely different names, right? Like they've completely Americanized their names. So you've got a German name, and you've got a Yiddish name, and you've got an American version of the name, right? So here's kind of the rule of thumb that I use in particular when I'm doing Jewish research, which is if I can determine what their name was at birth, that's the name I put in my tree as the main name. Because part of the reason I'm doing this is to memorialize them, right? But under here in your tree, under name and gender, you can actually add alternate names. So I can come in here and I can add an also known as, or I can just add another name fact, and it will create a separate fact, and then I have to decide. I could add 7 names for a person. I just have to pick which one's the preferred name, and that's the one that's going to show up in the header.
What did you put?
Yeah, what did you click on?
Add.
Oh, add. Okay.
Just add, and then add a name. And there's a really cool thing here too. You can also add namesake. So you can list, like you can add a fact about who they were named after. The other thing you can do, this is really cool. So I'm working with this group of Inuit Eskimos from northern Canada, and they have a beautiful naming practice in their culture where very similar to the Jewish culture, where if somebody, the person doesn't have to be dead in their culture, but if somebody is elderly or dying, they will name a new baby after that individual. And then the family, once that person passes, the family then embraces that new baby as if they embodied the spirit of that original person. And so they give them Christmas gifts, and they give them, like that person essentially, embodies the spirit of that individual. And so the woman that I'm working with that's doing this project, she has a name, and she knows who her namesake is, and she knows who the namesake of that person was, and she can trace her name back through 5 women. And she wanted to be able to link all of those women together because that is such an important part of their culture. So one of the things you can do right here in the center under add a source is add a web link. And so what you can do is you can actually go and find the URL, just copy this little page here, the URL of the namesake, and then you can go to the person's page that they were named after, and you can add a web link, and then you can, and you can label it however you want. And so essentially what we're doing is we're creating this link right in the middle that allows you to go to her page, and then you can click on that link, and it will take you to the page of the woman she was named after, and the woman she was named after, and you can trace. So it's not a family tree so much as a namesake connection through your tree. And so it's just a different way to kind of link some of that information. It's fabulous.
Alternative names in there, will Ancestry start?
Okay, that's a great question. So for those of you who didn't hear online, the question was, once you add alternate names, will Ancestry give you hints based on those? And the answer is yes. We will give you hints based on the alternate names. What won't happen is if you click this search button, we're only going to search on the primary name. Okay? So if you want to search on the alternate names, you'll have to manually enter them or switch which one is the preferred name. Yes? Mm-hmm. She's like, I feel like I'm drinking from a fire hose right now.
2 things. What happens when you make a mistake?
Okay.
I think we found somebody who's not really part of the family.
It happens.
And then the other question, looking at that, I put my father's birth last name, and then I put his name when he came into the country. They translated, but I think I put it all
as one name. You can do that. So that is, I've seen people do that. There are a couple problems with that. So if you know that somebody had two very distinct names that they used throughout their life and you want to reflect both of them, you can put them both in the name field. So it could be like, Moses, right, right, and right, and so you could add like there. I've seen people do that. Here's the problem with that. The first thing is that it actually confuses the hint system. Okay, so if you've got multiple names, you're going to end up with a bunch of hints that don't there's already some things that are going to show up in your hints that aren't your person. The more names you put in there, the more confusing it gets. Okay. The bigger thing is if you ever plan to do DNA testing with Ancestry, one of the things that we do is one of the benefits of testing with Ancestry is that we have 80 million family trees, and we can utilize the DNA and the trees together to help you understand how you're related to some of these people in your genetic match list. And if the names aren't consistent, the computers can't tell they're the same person. So if you're putting different names or different characters in there, so that's why I try to always give the recommendation: if you know what their name was at birth, do that. Or if you know what their name was at death, do that. But whatever you choose to do, be consistent throughout your tree, and then just add the other as the alternate. It just makes it a lot cleaner, both for the computer as well as for you. Yeah.
Like I said, when that happens, like I said, if you made a mistake.
Yeah, you can just go in and edit it. Yep. Everything is editable. So you can edit from a person page. You can also edit relationships. So one of the things that comes up sometimes is, well, she was the stepmother, not the real mother, or whatever. So you can actually change the nature of any relationship. So every relationship defaults to biological, but if he was really the stepfather, not the biological father, I could notate that. Or if a spouse was really not a spouse, it was just somebody they had children with, or you can adjust the nature of those relationships. And if you've incorrectly assigned somebody, maybe I picked up a spare child here somewhere that wasn't really theirs, I can just X this person out. Now here's the thing, it's under edit, and it's edit relationships. And so essentially what happens though, when you click X on the relationship screen, it's removing the relationship link. It's not deleting the person. So if you want to delete the person, you then have to just go find them and delete them, right? Which is another option here under edit. But sometimes you just want to remove the relationship because you assigned a child to the grandparents instead of to the parents, or I've made mistakes like that in my own tree. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and
Mine's
okay.
I accidentally often have the same person in the book.
Yep.
And I found the disasters come from, they delete the person.
Yeah.
It deletes both of them.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. What it does is it creates a person that's now an island because somehow you deleted their link to the family. So if ever you have duplicate people in your tree, and it happens, right? My mom's family's from the South, and bless their hearts, they cannot have the same name in any two censuses. I think it was some rule. I can find my family in 4 or 5 censuses at a stretch, and they never have the same name. In one census they're Bubba, and in one census they're JW, and in one census it's Johnny, and in one census it's Willie, right? They go by their middle name, their first name, their nickname, it doesn't matter. And so if I'm not really aware as I'm attaching these census records, every time it will attach this new child because it doesn't know who this person is, right? And so sometimes I'll go in and look at some of these families and I've got 2 or 3 duplicates of the same individual. Don't ever delete them, okay? Because what happens is you've done a little bit of research on this person and you've got some sources, and you've done a little bit of research on this person and you've got some sources, and when you figure out they're the same person, you want to merge all of that information. If you just delete one of them, you may lose information. You might lose relationships, you might lose sources. So under Tools, you have the option to merge with duplicate. Seriously, people. I know, right? The gasps. What that tells me is that y'all aren't just clicking on stuff to see what happens. Yeah. So you just click merge with duplicate, and then it will walk you through, like, here's the person, and then if it can tell that the other person is a duplicate, but sometimes you have to go looking for them, and it will pop up a list, and then it will walk you through that merge process. But here's the thing. You're just merging two people. If you had created two separate people and then added a wife and added children and then realized it was the same person, you're going to merge that guy, and now he's going to have 2 wives and 8 children. So then you have to merge the wives, and you have to merge, like, right? Well, it is, yeah. Like, you could have traced him and had through 2 different marriages or whatever, yeah. But if you didn't, like, again, my mom's family, they're from Arkansas, bless their hearts, and so they marry family a lot. My mom almost married her first cousin, and so what happens is I'll be tracing a family, and then I'll get like halfway through adding 20 people into my tree and go, this is all really familiar, and it's because I've now circled back to another family I already had in my tree, and so it's really much more efficient and better for your research to merge rather than to try to figure out which one of those to delete. Okay, you're next.
In a situation where someone is adopted,
Yes.
if you find out who the birth family is,
Uh-huh.
how do you add them? Should you do a separate tree, or should you somehow add them to the original tree, or
How you treat them.
how do you put them in? Because when I try
Messy
to
families.
like his, this woman who had nothing to do with the relationship came in as his mother, and that didn't work.
Okay.
I mean.
Okay, so for those of you who are online, the question is about how to add alternate parents in the case in particular of adoptions. Now, there's a couple of different ways to handle that. If the adoption is of a living person, so for example, if you adopted a daughter and you're building your family tree, but you've discovered who her biological parents are, you could build 2 separate trees. One is an adopted tree and one's a biological tree. But what if it's your great-grandma that was adopted, right? That gets a little messier. And so you don't want to have, like, how do you determine who goes in which tree? And anyway, so for me, what I just choose to do is just, if you're in the family, you're in my tree, right? Like, I have one tree to rule them all, and it is my tree, and if you're in, you're in. And it doesn't matter if you're biological or adopted or whatever. So on that edit relationship screen again, you can actually add additional parents. So I can add a whole new father, and I can set one to be biological and one to be adopted. And then I can add a whole nother mother, right? And so she'll have 2 sets of parents. Now here's the problem. Okay, so she will have 2 sets of parents, and you can add both trees in the tree. But pedigree charts by their nature are not designed to show multiple sets of parents. So you will have to select one of those sets of parents to be the preferred parents. I wish we had better language. It's right. It's horrible. Okay. And here's how I would recommend doing that. If anybody in that branch of the family has DNA tested, set the biological parents as preferred. Because if somebody is if you're a DNA match to somebody and they're looking at your tree and you know grandma was adopted and you know who her biological parents are, you want to make sure that's who's reflected in the tree that everybody else is looking at, or you're going to lead people very, very astray. Okay? If you know grandma was adopted and you don't know who her biological parents are, and you've taken a DNA test, I actually put in an unknown father and an unknown mother, and so that it's really clear that anybody who comes to look at the tree, that I have other parents for her, but I don't know who her biological parents are. Okay? So that's how I choose to handle it, so that everybody's in, but I set the 2 sets of parents, but then in pedigree view, the biological takes precedence because I do a lot of DNA work. So that gives you some things to think about. Okay, were you next, Lynn? Okay, we'll come back to you.
My question is somewhat related to that. I was just doing some research and I found a marriage certificate that had parents on it, and Ancestry just populates it just beautifully. And then I was continuing the search, and I think it came through kids, and I found another record, which was a Social Security application change that has parents listed.
Different parents. Yeah.
And I just like, I'm like, I'm not pressing anything, I'm not, touching anything.
Wait, what?
I do suspect, because I found also there was like, this person was born in 1908. They weren't with the original parents that I found in the 1910 census, but they were in 1920. So I think there was an adoption
Yeah.
kind of thing. Maybe
Yeah.
the original parents died, and
Yeah.
somebody else took on. Don't know for sure. How do I handle it in the meantime? And are maybes only for things that are from the shaky leaves, or are they also from when you research?
Okay.
Do you know?
That was a whole lot of
Know
questions
that?
in one
Yeah.
question there, Rose.
Okay.
Okay, so what you're looking at,
Kind of my mom.
no, you're great. So what you're looking at essentially is two pieces of conflicting evidence. You have a document that says this is her parents, you have a document that says these are her parents. Now you've developed a hypothesis about what you think, but what I'm hearing you say is you already added the parents from the one record into the tree,
Right.
even though the parents from the second record may actually be her
They're
parents,
probably
the biological parents. Yeah. Okay, so if it was me, I would add the second set of parents, right? And then I'm a big fan of notes. One of the things under tools is notes or comments. And I add, like you can see,
Oh, wow.
right? I notate everything because I don't know if you research like I research, but I research sometimes till 2 and 3 in the morning, and then I have no clue what I did when I come back the next day. And so, so I notate everything so that I can come back and understand what I was doing and like why did I put these two sets of parents in here? If
The
you,
question was, how did you open the notes?
oh, it's under tools and view notes or view comments. You'll also notice there's actually
How
this,
will you know there's a note to?
you won't,
You won't
no.
know.
I actually, the bottom option on the view tools menu is show research tools. And you'll notice it then takes all of the menu options under there and it just puts them right here and under the, right? And then it's sticky. So they're just always there for me. It's the bottom option on the tools menu. It's called show research tools. And if you just check it, then that becomes a sticky menu right there on the person. So here's the deal about notes and comments. Notes are private. So my tree is public. Any one of you could go search anybody in my tree. You will be able to see my tree, but my notes are private because they're my research notes. Comments are public. So if ever there's something that I want anybody else to be able to see, things like here's why I did this or here's what this is all about, I will make a comment. And once you've made a comment, that actually is visible right here. It will it'll take it a second to refresh, but it will show you that there is. It is thinking. There it is. Okay, so there is a comment. Okay, so that is visible to everybody and a kind of a visual notation to you that you've got some comments. Notes are my research thinkings as I'm working through something. Comments are usually about things I want to make sure that anybody who looks at my tree knows so that they don't get confused or think I'm an idiot. Right? So, like I added 2 sets of parents because this, or this record says this, but based on other evidence, I've been able to come to this conclusion so that what's in my tree makes sense to the people who come after me. Yeah?
Yeah, you said that pedigree won't show all the parents. What does the pedigree do for second spouses?
Yeah, so it also does not show that. The purpose of a pedigree, so it will show it for the primary person. So if Robert had another spouse and other children, they would all show up here. But if Samuel up here has a second spouse, it's not going to show in this view because this is a view that is who are Robert's ancestors. And Samuel's second wife is not Robert's ancestor, right? There is another view. So from this page, you can click on this little icon over here on the left, and it switches it to family view. And family view will show all parents and all children, or all spouses and all children. Yeah. So this is just a little bit more of a, here's a map of your family tree. You can kind of drag around it, zoom in and out to work on different parts of your tree, but it does show all spouses and all children. Pedigree view is distinctly for the ancestors of whoever that primary individual is.
Yeah, if you have another program like Family Tree, and say you have a pedigree of about 1,500 names on it, is there a way to take all that information and transfer it to Ancestry pedigree?
Yeah, okay, so the question for those of you online was, If you have another software program or another way you've been building your family tree outside of Ancestry, is there a way to transfer that information into Ancestry? And there absolutely is. If you use Family Tree Maker or within the next month or two Roots Magic, both of those you can just sync, and it will automatically take everything in your software and put it into your tree, and it will keep them in sync. If you use some other software program, actually all software programs that I'm aware of have the ability to export a JGSGO file. Now, here's the limitation of a JGSGO file. It is just a flat text file. So it will take all the names, it will take all the dates, it will take all the places, it will take all the source citations, but it won't take any of the media. So if you've got documents and images and stuff attached in that software program, it won't create that. It is just a flat text file. But with that flat text file, you can actually come in here into trees, and you can upload a JGSGO file. And then it'll take that and create a tree in Ancestry without you having to do all of that data entry again.
One other thing with the JGSGO, to be aware, especially because we're doing Jewish trees, we've got a lot of alternate names. From what I understand, different systems
export differently.
The way they handle alternate names,
Yeah.
and a few other fields, but that's one that's particularly effective.
Yep.
Would it use Family Tree Maker?
I know. Yeah, that is a challenge, is data transfer among different programs. And the JGSGO file format was developed 30 some odd years ago and hasn't really been updated. And so we're kind of working within the limitations of that. But
You say that Family Tree Maker is going to upgrade their program?
Yeah. No, Family Tree Maker actually has a new version coming out this month. It syncs with Ancestry. It has since 2012. It will continue to do so. But now Roots Magic, which is another software program, Roots Magic has a new version coming out either this month or next month, and it will also now sync with Ancestry, and that's new. I use Family Tree Maker. Just Ancestry used to own Family Tree Maker before we sold it to another software company, and so I've just kind of used it all along and have plans to continue to do so for the foreseeable future. Yeah.
Question I asked you before. Like I said, I have multiple people buried in a cemetery. How do I figure that out?
Okay, so we get asked this question all the time, which is essentially, how do I do a query of my tree to pull out some subset of people that meet a certain set of criteria? Buried in the same cemetery, lived in the same town, whatever, right? And the unfortunate news is you cannot do that in your online tree. However, if you do have software, all softwares have that capability. To be able to run queries on your specific database on your tree. Now, the question then is, why doesn't Ancestry do that? We have looked at that. It is on the product list of things that we consider on a regular basis. One of the challenges, of course, is we have 80 million family trees. And so there's a lot of data to sift through and to figure out what that looks like at an individual tree level. And what some of those filters are. I use the filters in Family Tree Maker constantly. Like, I'll create a list of, show me every male born between 1872 and 1900 living in the United States in 1918. Because now I've just created a list of men that I should be able to find in a World War I draft card. And I can go through and make sure I've found everybody that meets that criteria. Or show me everybody who ever was born, married, died, or lived in the city of Cincinnati, because I'm going there for work and I want to see if I have people from here. Right? And I can do those kinds of queries in Family Tree Maker, and I do them all the time. But online, it's not as simple.
Do you think it will ever happen?
Yeah, like I said, it's on our product list, so it's discussed often. It just never quite. Yeah. I ask for it regularly, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of people who've been involved in family history to this point have also always had a software program. And so we didn't need to do it because other things did. But as we're kind of moving more to this online thing and more people are coming into family history who only have their tree online, that's something that we have to consider. So,
a lot of things you just talked about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is the new Family Tree Maker going to have a Mac version right away?
Yes. Yeah, as a matter of fact, the software company that we sold our Family Tree Maker program to is the same company who's been developing the Mac product for us for 3 years. And the latest update. Yeah.
I just got a new Mac This does not have a DVD drive.
Yeah.
A former family tree maker is on.
Yeah.
has a DVD, so I don't
They
know.
have it. Are you on? You're on Facebook, right? They have a Facebook page. Family Tree Maker has a Facebook page, and the CEO of the company is on that Facebook page every day.
Well, he has his own Facebook.
Well, he does. Yeah, he's super involved, super hands-on, super responsive. So if you've got some specific concerns, you might want to go and post them there, and he can.
Anything the website that allows you to download it. Now,
Yeah.
they're pretty flexible.
They are.
about it.
Yep.
So you've got-
Okay, one or two more questions, and then we probably need to let people go.
We gotta have a drawing.
Oh yeah.
Missouri is wonderful. I can go on their website.
Yeah.
And all the benefits. Is there a way to get a list of your state's action through the state record? You guys do actual record.
Yeah, so I use Family Search has a wiki that is just tremendous because the community is constantly updating it. So if you just go to wiki.familysearch.org, you can type in the name of any state and it will tell you exactly what records are available for which state and where. And usually, like, there'll be links at the bottom of the article to, you know, if they're on the state's website or if they're on Ancestry or if they're on Family Search, right? I use that for that a lot. There's the problem with creating a comprehensive source is that that comprehensive source is outdated the next week, right? Yes, we may have to talk about that afterwards. That's a whole discussion we didn't even get into. Naturalization records. I would love to teach a whole class on that someday. Maybe you can have me back.
Are you looking forward to it?
Just so you get the warm weather, right?
Yeah,
Every year?
maybe every other year. Yeah.
Or we can always bring you in from your desk.
I'm happy to do a webinar. Absolutely. Okay, one more question.
Greg Rackett changed his name after he left Europe and came to this country,
Mhm.
and before he married. So I should enter him being under the name he was born with.
That's how I would do it.
And then at what point and how do I indicate?
So when you add that fact, here's why I sometimes use the also known as fact. So if I just enter a name, let me show you here. If I just enter a name, it just becomes either an alternate or a preferred name. But where somebody intentionally changed their name, I will usually actually add it as, oh, we changed it. Sometimes we change things and I forget that we do that. Or it works differently in different, oh, here we go, custom event. I will actually come in here and create a custom event with a date that is a name change, so that I know that he went through a formal process or an informal process, and that from this date forward, he was using this name. Because then what happens is, it will show up in the timeline of his life, this was his name, and then here is when he changed his name and started using a different name. Okay, and so that's just the custom fact, custom event, and it allows you to just say name change, add a date, right? If it happened legally in a particular courthouse, you could add the location and then just add a description.
That's what you say, but I have not found it.
Yeah, but you can, I would still add
All
it.
of his records.
Yeah, I would
After
still
a
add it for
certain
sure.
period,
Yep.
it's different.
Yeah, that way, for your sanity and for the sanity of anybody who comes to look at it, they can see a really clear line of demarcation that from this point forward, he started using this name. Yeah. Okay, I think